This dominates our coverage. It's been a day of emotion as the AmaZulu King made his final journey to the royal palace in KwaNongoma today. King Goodwill Zwelithini passed away on Friday following diabetes and COVID-19 related complications. Today his remains were transported from a mortuary accompanied by Amabutho and Zulu maidens. Cultural rites have been conducted tonight ahead of the interment, which is expected to happen after midnight. eNCA anchor Zwelithini is still live on the streets of KwaNongoma covering all of this for us. And Zwelithini, as I was saying, we're now waiting for what's going to happen overnight. We're not going to be able to see it, but what is our understanding of what's meant to happen over the coming hours?
Well, Tembi, it's quieter now here in KwaNongoma outside the Mthandayo Palace here. And it's a far cry from the scenes that we saw a bit earlier on. I can tell you now that this area and this valley of KwaNongoma perhaps still echoes the cry of Wena Wendlov, Bayete, as you heard there, those Amabutho and those maidens in their various regiments coming through to pay their homage to the fallen king, King Goodwill Zwelithini Zulu, in Ndlondle Papa Ekhanda. As I talk to you now, in the distant background, about a kilometer, 800 meters to a kilometer in that direction, there's still a lot of activity. People just outside of the palace, Mthandayo, many of them coming from different parts of KwaZulu-Natal, organize themselves and communicating through their izinduna and basically making it clear that despite the difficulties and the restrictions that are in place with COVID-19, they want to be here to pay homage to their king. So they've been filing in small groups, dropped off by buses that are parked to the front of where we are standing here, and basically just making their way as they chant those hymns and those chants, traditional Zulu chants that talk about their history and pride in their heritage. In terms of what's going to happen in the coming hours, it is a process that is shrouded in secrecy, and a mystic process, rich, steeped in its history, and basically that's all I can say about it. It's the interment of the mortal remains of King Goodwill Zwelithini Zulu, and the family insisting that that space be respected, that sanctum be respected. But what I do know is that by the time we get underway with the government leg of the memorial service, as you'll know that the late king had been afforded a Category 1 special official funeral. By the time that happens on Thursday morning, it will basically be a matter for government and those dignitaries that will have come through, and the eulogy to be paid by President Cyril Ramaphosa. But in terms of the cultural processes, those will have been conducted overnight.
Zwelithini, you were mentioning just some of the people who are still out in KwaNongoma tonight trying to pay their respects. And earlier there was the concern raised about those volumes of people. Not everyone was compliant with the requirements along with mask wearing because we are still in a pandemic. I'm wondering how that is now being policed and managed, because as was being said by the royal family through Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the last thing they want is for this to become a COVID-19 super spreader.
And actually, the AmaZulu monarchy Prime Minister, Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, insisting that so strict was His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini Zulu about adhering to issues around COVID-19, that at the time at which his oldest son, the Prince Letuktula, passed on a few months ago, the king, according to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, insisted that the Prime Minister, Prince Buthelezi, not come to the funeral because he fell into that category of people who are particularly vulnerable in as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And it's a testament that you will hear from other people who have been involved, particularly in public messaging around responding to health issues. So the Department of Health and officials previously involved with that department have been relating stories about how he came to the fore, the late king, came to the fore in driving messages around HIV and AIDS, in driving messages around the response to cholera. Sibani Mungati, who has since moved on to do other things in the private sector, relating those stories from when he was in the Department of Health. So all of those come to the fore, that concern around COVID-19. Let me tell you, though, Tembegile, that I heard a conversation, I was listening to a conversation with Minister of Health, Zwelithini, talking about his response to the concerns around this being a super spreader event. Because make no mistake, the number of people that are here is concerning. The number of people that will be showing up tomorrow will be of concern to public health officials. Minister Zwelithini saying to Ukhozi FM, the SABC radio station, that actually he has supplied 1,000 masks to Amabutho through, Umtitieli Amabutho, the man who was leading the chants there, to make sure that they are compliant. Because some of them were even saying that, what do you expect us to do? We can't have His Majesty passing on and we show no response. We'd rather show up and then we deal with the consequences later. So that's being responded to as far as supplying masks and asking people to mask up. But you're absolutely right. There's also measures being implemented closer to the gate of the palace, where there's that screening and sort of making sure that people are sanitized and making sure that people mask up. But definitely this will be an issue of concern in the days to come for public health officials.
And also on Thursday then, Tulas, there's already been conversation about what Prince Buthelezi was saying will be the reading of a will from the king. No clear indication yet as to what else will be announced then. Will there be more discussions or pronouncements made on the future of the kingdom as far as who its next leader might be possibly?
All of that remains part of the processes that are shrouded in that rich heritage. And so it's not as obvious as other kingdoms as perhaps it would happen in the UK, for example, in England, in terms of knowing in advance who the next king will be. But processes that are well established, because King Goodwill Zwelithini Zulu was the 8th king of the AmaZulu in the kind of form as we know AmaZulu right now, if you don't count the groupings that were there before AmaZulu became one consolidated nation. So a history of 200 years, I think, has set a path that they know very well where to start in terms of following up, in terms of who takes over the mantle of leading AmaZulu.
Thulasizwe Simelane live on the streets of KwaNongoma for us tonight as we continue to bring you coverage on the passing of AmaZulu King Goodwill Zwelithini. And we're going to stay with the story of His Majesty's interment.